here we are again. It's always such a pleasure. You just caught me in the middle of some Yakuza 0, one of my favorite games of all time. I absolutely have to make a video on this series at some point. Until then, let's kick back and watch the intro movie. I love it. All of it. This is an opening movie with swagger. This game is so fucking confident, it opens on a shot of a cigarette and shoes for fuck's sake, and yet it's enough of a hook, it grabs you. It slow rolls out the action, not even showing anything that exciting until the 17-second mark. Then once it hits, it's an all-out party to the finish, switching between high-octane action scenes to quiet drama all in the same breath. And the music is just incredible. We're using the English intro here. The Japanese intro uses a licensed song, Bubble. But while that intro is all about setting the stage for the decadent wealth of this gluttonous age of the Japanese real estate boom, this English song instead follows the tone of the game much better. Bubble is all about the setting, an all-night party laced with money, booze, and bitches. This song, which I recall some YouTube commenter dubbing The Tale of Dragon and Mad Dog, is more about how the actual story will go. Yes, it will be a non-stop ride, but it's also going to be bumpy and not pleasant all the time. There will be sadness, there will be pain. That shot of Majima hanging onto the hospital doors in despair as the music reaches its climax is burned into my mind. Another interesting thing about this intro, it shows off all of the game's true money-maker shots, but it gives you just enough, a brief taste, so that when the full meal comes later in the story, it doesn't ruin the impact at all. This, my friends and friendas and everything in between, is arguably the best damn template for a forgotten art, the video game opening. Much like most anime shows these days, not that long ago video games used to have these openings before or right after the main menu started. Whether you call them an attract menu, an intro, or that piece of shit you always skip, I find these a fascinating and disappearing piece of video game history. They still exist, yes, but they aren't as common as they used to be. And to be completely fair, not every game needs an intro. For example, if The Last of Us opened with a country rock song set to Joel blowing fools away, not only would that be tonally dissonant, but it would also be a waste of perfectly good disk space. In my opinion, an opening's goal should be threefold, and this applies to these anime openings as well, so keep that in mind. 1. The intro should set the tone and energy of the game in question. A high-energy intro best pairs with a high-energy game, Sonic Adventure being the perfect candidate. High energy and high tension for a ridiculously fast game so long as you don't complain about the fucking cat. On the same token, a game with an adventurous spirit is best paired with a game of similar wavelength. Since we're talking about anime, Tales of Symphonia draws to mind. An intro as emotional as it is, drawing feelings of wonder and adventure, fitting with the surprisingly mature story hidden just deep under the skin, but all the while never forgetting it's a high fantasy RPG. 2. The intro should have some story context. Whether or not it wants to tell you that story is a whole nother ballgame. Some, like Call of Duty 4, tell you a lot. You get told the stakes, get told the villain's motivation, and in general there's a lot of talking about things for a short intro. However, others, like The World Ends With You, take things a bit of a different way. In an intro that otherwise simply looks like a cool bit of music video, in its own way spoils everything. Every plot beat is spoiled in this short, but it's obscured in such a way you will not realize it without context. Even the things that you get to see are so abstract without you having played the game. Something as innocuous as this one character turning his head and smirking, which sets off major alarm bells to anyone who's beaten the game, will make no sense to a first-time player. And number 3, the opening should be skippable. Of all the entries here, not a single one has any major story context or necessary component needed to understand the plot, because by that point, in my mind, that's become part of the prologue and not an opening. In my opinion, No More Heroes does this pretty damn well. But without the opening of that game, you may be as to a loss why Travis Touchdown is going around killing people and trying to be number 1. Meanwhile, if you were to skip the intro video of something like, say, Kingdom Hearts, the only thing that you would miss is the dive into the heart, which is explained away as a dream anyways in terms of the story. Now, traditionally, these types of intros have always remained pretty consistently associated with Japanese video games, and honestly, it makes too much sense. After all, I mentioned anime openings before, it's completely likely that some of these openings were heavily inspired by said anime. Hell, the previously mentioned Tales of Symphonia is even shot like one. Tales specifically does everything is marked on the list. It sets up the atmosphere and the pace of the game with its music, and it even has a traditionally sung anime-esque song, Starry Heaven. Okay, hold up. Some of you may be looking at the screen right now in confusion. Tales of Symphonia didn't open up with singing? Well, that's because Tales is one of the many games that had different openings depending on which version you're playing. The US GameCube and PS2 versions had alternative songs, while all Japanese versions and the later PC and remaster had different versions of Starry Heaven. Anyways, much like an anime intro, this opening introduces us to every major character minus the main villain of the game. Interestingly, most of the characters are introduced twice in different lighting and action scenes. Given the rather dark tone of Symphonia, I wonder if that is meant to show that there's more to these characters than they first look. The exception being Kratos, who starts off animatic and never really loses that till the end credits, and Rain and Genis, who are pretty pure-hearted throughout all the way through. Meanwhile, The World Ends With You is similarly shot like an anime, this time complete with credits interspersed throughout the intro. However, this time, the song Twister is in English, though good luck understanding a single fucking thing they're saying. I've played this game to 100% twice, and I still don't know if this song means something. I guess you could say that the power is still unknown to me? But far from me to say it was a Japanese exclusive deal here. The West also got in on the pre-game action from anywhere from big tie-in games like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Warhammer 40k to more original properties like Mafia, Spy Hunter, or yes, even Call of Duty. The Buffy intro is actually pretty interesting since it's more or less a carbon copy of the TV show's intro. And that's a pretty smart way to do it, especially since you already have a kick-ass main theme song to work off of. All you need to do is introduce the cast and keep your attention on kick-ass action scenes, and what's cool about all of this is all directly captured from the game, no animation or pre-rendered footage here. It's a double-edged sword, honestly. You can't make it look too good because the limitations of the Xbox stop you from not having everything look slightly awkward, but on the flip side, everything you get to see here you can look forward to seeing directly in the game. If you're looking for a Western game that captures the spirit of the main game while looking much prettier, look no further than Burnout 3 Takedown. Crashes, racing, loud punk rock music, and deliberate crashing? No notes? You summed up everything perfectly in the first minute. And if you want the honest truth, I think the chaos of this intro is somehow less than what you can achieve in this game proper. Now, a common theme so far in a lot of these intros has been music. Whether they had an original song or some licensed music, all these intros have been synced up to some manner of song. But it don't gotta be like this, especially the Western PC market has chosen this route. And for that we have nothing else to look at than Warhammer 40k, Dawn of War. Now, Dawn of War has an unenviable task. Sure, I do believe that a lot of fans picked up the game based on being 40k fans, but I think a vast majority of the players may have just heard it was a pretty baller RTS and decided to pick it up from there. So how do you introduce the world of 40k to a brand new audience? Show a massive fucking war scene where both orcs and spacemen get fucking butchered all as a desperate hold for reinforcement rages. Yep, now that take care of any question that people will have over 40k. A nice thing I also noticed about this intro is it seems to go out of its way to introduce as many units as possible, hyping up the player to weaponize those themselves. But that's not the only way to do it. Take a look at The Witcher's intro. Now, yes, this intro is a beefy 7 minutes long, without doubt the longest intro I took a look at this video. But that's because this whole battle being shown here is actually a fight from one of the Witcher books, the Last Wish in particular. Everything is pretty much the same, with Geralt using an evil lord as bait, to the fact that he refuses to use any means initially to kill the Striga, and even just shows how badass Geralt can be by going full fisticuffs on this beast to the point it's afraid of him. That's how you set up a badass hero, ladies and gents. Still, if that's 7 minutes, that's pretty cool to watch the first time, never again. I suppose if being too long for an intro is a bad idea, what else would I consider intro sins? Well, for that, let's stop no further than Perfect Dark Zero, words that hurt me to this very day. What Perfect Dark Zero is going for is obvious. It's supposed to be emulating a classic James Bond opening scroll, except it misses the mark in so many ways. First off, there's a lot of canned, slow, boring animations of Joanna going off in the background. Secondly, the high technical mumbo-jumbo info is damn near unreadable and uninteresting as it only goes to like a tenth of the army from the game for some reason. Long and short, it's just not that interesting to look at, doesn't really have any relevance to the game itself other than, hey, look at this hot dame over here, and it's fairly static and boring. As a matter of fact, to compare and contrast, let's look at a real Bond game, Everything or Nothing on the PS2, which goes for a similar focus on hot girls and guns. But take a look at the cool transitions, the focus on red, tanks, and guns. This looks like you're getting a peek into the bad guys' plans, which probably have something to do with the Soviet Union. I don't know, I haven't played a lot of this game. But it just stomps over everything Perfect Dark did. Look at that model turning into the gun that Bond uses to shoot the camera. That's class. Of all the intros I decided to cover, however, the nadir might have actually been GTA 3, which is a bunch of repetitive establishing shots set to not so great music. Did anyone actually fall asleep during this intro? I need to know. Ironically, another intro that I think does a major sin is the aforementioned Call of Duty 4. Now, the intro is fantastic. For the first half, the cold opening by Captain Macmillan is such a fantastic drop into the new Call of Duty. The transition between narrators setting the stage, the imagery is just about abstract enough to hide any major story moments, and then the second half is pretty okay action shots, and then one of the biggest twists in the fucking franchise right there in your face. Now, before you start, I do believe that Call of Duty does tell very good stories for the most part. Vanguard, go sit in the corner and think about what you did. But Modern Warfare was the first game I think did the plot of a COD game right, so that every moment was a tense experience where anything could happen, or not, because the second that you see this part of the intro, you already know one of the player characters is going to die in a nuclear bomb. Oops, spoilers. So, honestly, this intro is bad just because it takes one of the rules I said above and overplays it. It tells you far too much, so this kind of important moment is lost on the player later on. Thank God my impatient ass skipped over this when I was a little youngin', or I would have been pissed. As the days went on and games continued to evolve, the classic video game intro died out. All the franchises I mentioned above, even Yakuza, who used it as late as 2016's Yakuza Kiwami before they dropped it following the main engine shift. And honestly, I never thought I'd see another one in that classic style until 2019 hit, and a little game called Persona 5 Royale. As it turns out, Atlas still believes in the classic game opening, probably not helped by them pretty much being anime openings like I mentioned before. Royale got a completely redone intro, given far more focus on members like Haru and Akechi, and newcomer Kasumi, so they get more prominent roles in this version of the game. And then next year, Persona 5 Strikers got an awesome intro with the best opening song in the franchise, Don't At Me. You Are Stronger is such a strong bop. The intro is perfectly placed. Placed?
No shit, Sherlock.
The intro is perfectly paced. It completely welcomes the new high-action take on the Phantom Thieves and has so many wallpaper-worthy moments. And thankfully, this is not an isolated incident to Persona, because the game that started this whole video off, the latest game I own and the latest game I know to use a traditional intro, ladies and gentlemen and everyone in between, Tour de Pizza's Pizza Tower. And yeah, it's not the drop-dead great of an intro. I think there's a lot of wasted space. There's the silly art style shit near the end, but it sets up the nervous, surrealist humor of the game perfectly. Its intense breakneck pace shows that Peppino is damn near indestructible and shows exactly what Peppino is fighting for. An age where I think I would struggle to see a single game this popular have a full opening movie like this. Just warms my heart, man. So why don't we take a step back and end this video off with one of my personal favorites. Sky Gunner on the PS2, another Atlas joint. Who'da thunk? It's simply beautiful. The imagery of Ciel falling through the sky only for his plane to roar up from the endless blue ocean into the sun is such a powerful scene for me. It instantly brings me calm, like remembering a beautiful sunset. It introduces every single character in the story, but unlike the ones we mentioned up top, introduces all their relationships. Ciel is the calm, cool hero, Kapan is the hot-headed rival best buddy, Fama is a proper lady with an endless cute streak, that Chief looks like an egg that got dented, and hell, even the rival for Ciel makes an appearance whose name is Rival. And when the music reaches its peak, it's literally brought in by a gunshot and the plane taking off to the skies as our hero begin an epic dogfight. And the song, Wishing for an Eternal Sky, or sometimes read as To the Eternal Sky, is such a beautiful, folkish song that it brings back many memories of my childhood. My bedroom with its brown, itchy carpet, my soft cloth PJs, and my sister watching from over the top of our bunk bed. Even if I can't tell what the singer is singing about, I know exactly what she's singing about. This is why, to me, the video game intro is so important, because this intro alone brings me to a simpler time, when I got this game out of nowhere for my birthday. That's how it's kept me going even though the game beat me down quite a bit. It's an Atlas game after all. It primed me, made me damn sure I could never forget as long as I lived. I would have never picked up Yakuza if it hadn't been so stylishly confident. I would have been intrigued by Silent Hill and if it didn't grip me with visions of past, present, and future. A good video game opening, if done extremely well, can be as important to the game as any of the actual gameplay, story, or music. Thanks for listening.